Good morning and welcome to Wayne's Lock Shop and LockReference.com. Today we're going to be looking at the Schlage AD series locks. This is a multi-card pin technology lock that also uses Wi-Fi and NFC credentials and readers. It's a wireless lock. This lock is a great option for schools and retrofits because it can be used standalone and it can be used in a network. Here we see a metal door. This is a hollow metal door that's prepped. You can see the cart that we have with all of our tools. We had quite a large project for this particular installation. So you can see that the person left the door after they used the jig to actually drill the holes and prep the door so that I can come by and begin installing it. Here's the mortise body pocket. And you can see that I'm using an impact driver with a number 3 Phillips head bit. Be careful when using an impact driver. This can make your job easier, but just be careful not to break or strip screws. We insert the mortise body, put both screws in the mounting positions or tabs on the frame, and then we put the cover plate on. Yes, you can put the cover plate on immediately, unlike most installations. Here, we're actually adding the door position sensor, and you can see the door position sensor comes in from the side, and the wires come in through this center drilled hole. I like to twist the wires together to help feed them through the hole. Next thing that we're going to install are the 2 studs that go through the actual mortise body. Now you're going to need to compare this and actually line the lock up with the mortise body to see which 2 locations you're going to need to mount these 2 studs. They can go in this position or they could go in the exact opposite position, just depending on your handing and application. Once we have those installed, we can then install the center square spindle with the beveled edge pointed out, and then align the 2 arrows on the spindle portion and the body of the lock for the outside external secure side portion. Then feed the wire through the hole and line up the studs, inserting the exterior portion of the lock. You can now see those 2 studs that we just put on the lock body poking through the mortise body along with the wire and the door position sensor. We then install the anti-rotation plate. This plate has 2 screws that go in just like so, and they have a tapered head. They're the only taper head screws that come in the packet that I'm aware of. Next, this is a metal door, and normally on these applications, if it was a wood door, these little screws just go right into the wood. However, on a metal door, you will have to pre-drill them. I found that this little self-tapping drill bit actually had the perfect size hole for pre-drilling these, so that's what it looks like after the fact. This is helping to secure and reinforce the strength of the lock, so it is very important that this step not be skipped. Now that we have the external portion of the lock on, you can see that this is an interchangeable core or IC type of system. So we're going to put the core in last. That's why the handle's on and the core goes in last. Next, for the internal portion, I personally found that it was easier to install the battery pack while the door or while the lock is in your hand as opposed to when it's on the door. So you can see we put the battery pack in, put the cover strap over, and install the 2 screws that I'm pointing at. Do not connect the battery. Do not under any circumstances connect the battery yet. Next, we're going to go ahead and install the spindle after we install the spring. You can see the spring goes in first, and then the spindle goes in with the round portion going into the spring in the spindle hole location and the beveled portion of the spindle facing out. Once we have all this put together, we then feed the door position wires and the connection wires from the external portion of the lock and feed the spindle into the spindle hole, just like so. These are the 3 things you have to line up. Now, this is where this particular version of the AD series is a little bit different than the other versions. The way the wires actually come in through the lock is slightly different than some of the other versions, like cylindrical, lever set, or the exit device versions. You can see how twisting those wires together kind of helps feed it through wooden doors and metal doors so that those wires stay together. That was a little time-saving tip that I'm giving to you to help you so you can make sure that your job is effective and efficient as possible. Next, we're going to install the major 4 mounting screws. These should be 1/4x20 pan head screw. They are the shorter ones. They're about 1.5 inches long roughly. And there's 4 of these, 2 in the top and 2 in the bottom. So I'm showing exactly what that screw looks like, and then I'm pointing to the 2 screws that go in the bottom. These 2 right here are your mounting screws. These go into the mounting studs that go into the external portion of the lock as well. Here is the entire lock pretty much mounted and secured. You can begin testing to see if the handing is working. You can test the function of the lever, and you can make sure that everything is working well at this point. Now you're going to have 2 very long pan head screws. These really long pan head screws are actually going to go through the inside of the lock, and they're going to connect to the external portion and that plastic piece on the outside of the lock. Here you can see both of these screws lined up. I highly recommend, this is going into plastic, so I would not recommend using an impact driver on these, and I would recommend lining them up by hand. Here's one of the screws that I am guessing gets forgotten a lot. Again, on a wood door, this would go right in, as it is more of a wood type of screw. However, it does require this in the instructions. If it's not wood, if it's metal, you need to pre-drill it and still install this screw. This is going to give the lock strength and rigidity against getting loose and possibly being torn off the door. Next, we've got the door position sensor. You can see there's these 2 terminal blocks and these 2 screws. It says DPS for door position sensor. So we will go ahead and prep the wires using these scissors. I found a good pair of heavy-duty scissors is always going to be key to making sure this works well. Trimming the wires down so that you have a small portion designed to just make contact with the terminal block but not have exposed bare wire is key for this. You can see how much I'm leaving here. This is just about right. I was able to put these in the terminal blocks just the way they are and have no exposed wire. Now these don't have power running to them. However, when dealing with low voltage, this is always a good practice. You can see how I loop the wires over, run it in a little bit of a loop because I'm going to have to pack some more wires into here, and then run it over to the door position sensor. Nothing is being pinched or bound in any way, shape, or form. Next, I will hook up the main plug, and this plug has 1 simple line in it. Line that up with the adjacent line on the receiving portion of it and simply plug in. Do not force. Now, this is what I consider some kind of shielding material. I'm not sure exactly what it does. I'm sure Allegion has their reasonings for needing this, but it's basically like a piece of aluminum foil on some adhesive, and I'm guessing it's used to block RFID reading or scanners of some sort. I'm not 100% sure, but it basically is just adhesive. You stick it on the door after the lock's installed and you're done. Now we're going to just simply put on the internal handle by sliding it over the handle post and clicking it into place. This is one of the most important parts of the installation and needs the most care. This chip is going to come in a bag that says do not touch, and make sure that you don't have oily fingers. You can only touch this piece on the external portions or on the edges and right here in the center where I'm pushing it. That will not hurt anything, okay? Do not put your fingers and get your fingerprints on this board. Notice how these 2 little plastic studs poke through after this piece is seated in place. This is why I do this last, because it is one of the most important and delicate pieces of the installation process. This is what the door lock looks like with almost all the pieces installed and in a good progressive manner. Now that all connections are made, I repeat, now that all connections are made, you may now plug in the battery pack. You do not plug in the battery pack until all electrical connections are made. Here's another little helpful tip. If you can bend or crimp these wires, not pinching them in any way, shape, or form, but just bend them a little bit so that they stay put and in place, it makes putting this bottom plate on just a little bit easier. 1 more machine screw, pan head screw for this bottom plate, secures that and locks it in place, and then you'll have 2 dark pan head screws for this top cover plate. This simply slides right into place, and these 2 darker screws go right into place on that plastic. Again, probably not the best idea to use an impact driver on anything plastic, and that should suck that plastic piece down and cover the foil. Here we have a completed unit on a hollow metal door on the inside and the outside. For more information, contact Schlage for details on their AD400 modular series. Thanks for watching, and check out Wayne's Lock Shop.